Hello and welcome to Module 1, um, where we will be learning more about informatics theory and metastructures of informatics. The learning outcome associated with this module is to analyze information systems with regard to the data to wisdom continuum using major theories underpinning informatics. And so we've talked a little bit about this already, but we'll go into a little bit more depth here. There are reading assignments, a Flipgrid video that you will complete for this module, and I'll go into the course in just a bit. I did want to go ahead and explain a few things to you, and I will try to make this presentation as brief as I can. One of the things that you might hear discussed is computer literacy, information literacy, or even computer fluency. And so I just want you to understand what that is in reference to. We have really done a lot of work in this area, especially since information technology has become so much a part of what we do in healthcare, in trying to make sure that those using it are fluent. So whether they're fluent with software systems or applications, just various technologies. And I know you are very aware of all the different types of technologies we have. And so you can imagine there's lots of different ways in which we need to assess computer literacy or fluency in healthcare. So the Fluent with Information Technology initiative, if you will, we want people to possess three types of knowledge related to that: contemporary skills, foundational concepts, and then intellectual capabilities. And because this particular module is related to theories and sort of the underpinnings, I do have several models, several theories I just wanted to bring to your attention. This is an illustration of an open system interacting with the environment. This is Dr. Ramona Nelson put this together just to sort of explain how systems work together within an environment and, you know, among themselves within that environment. And so you can see here from the image, she's identified the input, processing, and output, which is really, these three things are really general systems theory. But she has expounded upon this and considered the environment that the system would be working in, the boundary of the system, and then feedback back into a system from what is generated in the output. This is another illustration, a model describing a general communication system. And so you can see this is a very flat illustration here describing that system in which communication is traveling. We've talked again a number of times about data to wisdom and what that means. And just to again remind you the differences here. Data would be just raw data related to perhaps a heart rate, a blood pressure, or temperature. And then when we look at information, when we consider information, we think about, is this data elevated? Is it telling us that the heart rate is elevated or the blood pressure is lower than the baseline? In the knowledge realm, we consider, is this person dehydrated, or, you know, the person which we're getting this data from, do they have an infection? And then wisdom, we're determining what are the educational needs here, what do we need to act on, how do we need to respond, preventing reoccurrence. So that, I think this diagram has always sort of helped to illustrate and make sense of how those metastructures work together. Now, Dr. Ramona Nelson, again, has done a lot of work in this area in studying this. And so this is just another example of that idea of data to wisdom being expanded upon again. And she's taken into consideration the increasing interactions and interrelationships that occur along this continuum, as well as how complex things get in situations. So she has also added these little feedback loops. So going from collecting a data, a piece of data, and then determining or making information of it rather, and then back and forth all the way through this continuum. So that's just one way she's tried to describe this as well. Now in informatics, we talk a lot about change theories. So change theories are those that study changes in organizations or changes in individuals. Kurt Lewin is a popular theory, and then Everett Rogers and the diffusion of innovation. A lot of people have spent time talking about that, and I'm not sure if you all have read that or not. It's likely that you might if you take the technology cognate courses. It's very likely that we'll study this a little bit more because one of those courses will deal with innovation. And it's very interesting that Everett Rogers' work really builds on the work of many that have studied innovation, but he really became interested in it when his dad actually resisted a type of corn seed at their farm. And there was a new type of corn seed. There was a study that was ongoing explaining how, or trying to make sense of how a hybrid seed for corn was being used by farmers or not being used by farmers. And his dad actually didn't use this new type of corn seed that was supposed to be high yield and more drought resistant, but it was more expensive. And it was at a time during the Depression. But as a result of him resisting that seed, his farm took a big loss because of the weather. So anyway, Rogers, as a young person, sort of was front and center with that. And then as he grew up and went on to do his own career, he began to study innovation. And the work, again, that he's done can really be traced back to a French sociologist many, many years ago. But it's just a very interesting theory that he has built upon, and it's quite complex. So there's a lot of pieces to explaining an innovation and how it's received, and eventually adopted or not. So there's lots of different parts to it. To try to explain a little bit more, he says there are 4 elements of diffusion: innovation, communication channel, the timing, and the social system that exists. But this is probably a more popular, I guess, piece of his theory, and that's his diffusion of innovation bell. And so he considers the innovators to be this part of the population. Then you have the early adopters that begin to use or they're open to an innovation. Then the early majority, the late majority, then he refers to this group as the laggards. So you may hear these terms that of course, he didn't coin these terms necessarily, but he has put them to good use here in his theory. So you may see this in some of the things that you read. Now, I would not want to exclude mention of the systems life cycle model with regard to implementation of systems. There's a lot that goes into that in terms of, planning for it, with, in looking at vendors and doing workflow analyses and just different parts of it to the actual implementation and then the evaluation of it. It's a big process, and there's usually a lot of people involved. Now, Nancy Staggers and Ramona Nelson have put together this cycle, this systems lifecycle model to illustrate a lot of what goes into that process. And so you usually start with a plan, though, an analysis of what is needed, it would be wise as well. And then plans are made to develop or purchase a particular system. And you can see here, this is often an iterative process. So considering, what a vendor can actually offer, and what their forte is, and the type of systems that they create and install. So there's a lot of going back and forth sometimes. Then there's a test phase, an actual implementation and rollout, and then the maintenance that's involved. And then you see they've also added this deinstall idea here, this notion in case that's necessary. And then, of course, to go back and analyze, the idea here with this systems life cycle is that you are constantly in a cycle. You're eventually going to go back and analyze how well the system's working in that environment. Now, there are some other models that I just wanted to mention just because you may run across these. The nursing informatics pyramid model, and I showed you an image of that in that orientation video, is the one from like 1985. And then Turley's nursing informatics model, Goossen's framework for nursing informatics, and informatics research organizing model by Dr. Efkin. So those are just some of the models that are often mentioned in informatics study and informatics research. So I also wanted to share with you the module, the contents of the module. So I'm currently in student view within the course, and you can see the learning outcome is identified. There's an overview in writing for you, and then you have some reading assignments. And so the book chapters are 1, 6, and 15 for this particular module. And don't be surprised if we often refer to the same chapters again in different modules throughout the course, just because there often is some overlap in the concepts and the things that we're talking about and referring to. But I have provided you as well with the, I hope this pops up, yeah, the notes pages for the chapters that are provided by the publisher. So those will be there for you to see. And then you have a number of articles. Now, these are focused on different things related to nursing informatics theory. This one is related to the philosophical approaches to the nursing informatics data, information, knowledge, wisdom framework. There are some others here that are just probably more informational for you, just so you'll be sure that you have an understanding. This one is related to the ANA scope and standards that is published by ANA pertaining to nursing informatics, a specialty. And there are several other here I just want to point out. Nursing informatics research and emerging trends, we talked a little bit about this. I won't go through each of these, but I did want to point out this one in particular that I ran across recently, and I think that this one is going to be very helpful to you as you're also studying philosophy at this time. And so this is the Nursing Knowledge Pyramid, a theory of the structure of nursing knowledge. And there's a discussion of philosophy as well as theory and how that relates to the study of nursing informatics. So I just wanted to provide these for you, and I hope they help you as you begin to learn more. And as far as an assignment for this particular module, you will be doing a seminar presentation, and it's very much like the intro you did using Flipgrid, but there are some prompts that you'll use and so you'll respond to these just in, oral presentation format, 5 minutes or less. And just be sure you refer to the rubric here. I hope that this is clear for you to see. There you go. And this is the same rubric that we use throughout all of the presentations that you'll do in the course. So I hope this information is helpful to you. If you have any questions about the contents of this module, please feel free to contact me. And I look forward to reviewing your presentations.